Hey guys, Basement Horrors here, and welcome to True Horror Stories number 9. Number 1. I have always been more active at night, usually out for walks, runs, or even just hanging out at the park. I was 17 at the time of this incident, and knew the area like the back of my hand. I'm not usually scared of being out alone, as I lived in a really good neighborhood, and always made a note of a safe place to go if I need help depending on where I'm at in the city. I was out for a run about 9 o'clock. It was a beautiful night, and I decided not to take my phone with me. During my run, I crossed through a field beside an indoor pool and library, which is a very well-lit area. I had planned to go across the lot, turn right, and head down by the river for the last stretch back home. I'm always checking my surroundings, with my head on a swivel, and I noticed a man to my left. Taking out my earbuds, I slowed my jog and approached him, keeping about 2 arms length between us. I asked him if he was lost, and he let me know he was looking for the soccer center. I gave him very, very clear instructions, and he repeated them back to me. He thanked me and hesitantly went on his way. My jogging route was on the same path, so I was able to watch to see if he was able to get to the destination, although I kept that to myself. As I jogged on, I noticed a second person in the parking lot. He was looking at his phone, but all the vehicles around him were empty and turned off. His was running. At the time, I thought nothing of it and continued on. I rounded the corner, and the guy I spoke with had gotten stuck at a light, but he turned beside me shortly after and then stopped about 5 car lengths ahead and parked. He got out of the vehicle, which he then turned off and came to ask for more instructions. I kept my distance the best I could, again, and instructed him to go up half a block and turn another right. He then started tapping his pockets and told me he locked himself out of the vehicle. He checked the 2 doors on the driver's side, then, since I was on the sidewalk, asked me to try the others. I did, and they were locked. He then came around beside me and checked the rear passenger door again, despite me already trying it. I backed away and told him I'd be right back. I was going around the corner. It's at the end of the block, within eyesight and a bit to the left. No more than a 2-minute walk, to call a tow truck from the gas station. He, for some reason, tried to get me to stay, while he still tried the doors. I ran to the gas station, and nobody would let me use the phone, policy for customers only, and no one had a coat hanger, so I casually walked back. It was then that I saw, from a distance, the second guy in his vehicle, 5-ish car lengths behind the first guy, and I watched as the first guy got back into his vehicle, and they both drove off quickly, in the same direction. It was at that moment that I realized he was never locked out. He never needed directions, and this was all a ploy to kidnap some girl. I spun on my heels, and walked back in the direction of back home in the direction of the busy streets. No shortcuts, no back alleys, no parking lots. I will never leave home without my phone again, and I am so happy that I kept my distance while interacting with him. Number 2. I have an internet stalker. When you hear internet stalker, it doesn't seem as scary as stalkers who creep in real life, but it's honestly just as freaky and unnerving. I will refer to this one as Stalker 1, just in case he finds me. Plus, I have another story to tell which I'll post soon about Stalker 2. I've had a couple over the years. Anyway, about 2.5 years ago, on Facebook, a guy started liking all my posts. I never actually knew or met him before, but I accepted him because he had a lot of mutual friends. But I completely forgot about him until he started liking all my stuff. He messaged me one day and asked me out on a date. Me, being the stupid nice person that I am, nicely told him, "I'm sorry, but I have a boyfriend. We can be friends though, I guess." This is where I stuffed up. It's just my boyfriend's account was deactivated, so I assumed he didn't know I had one. He said sorry, and he'd like to be friends. And instead of being weirded out that some guy I don't even know asked me out to dinner, I wasn't for some reason, because he seemed so nice and apologetic when I told him I was in a relationship. He started making small talk with me every few days, and I started feeling comfortable. I was going through some stuff, and he asked me about it, and Me being drunk let it all out. A few days after that, he told me he loved me. It was 1 week of talking to him. I was like, how can you love someone you never met? And he just said, he loves me as much as someone he can love someone who they haven't met. I fought with him after that and told him that's not normal. I told him I don't want anything to do with him, and I blocked him. Thought it'd be the end of it, but no. My boyfriend stepped in, and he still wouldn't leave me alone. He has like 6 different Facebooks, and kept messaging me off them, telling me to pack up me and my kids and move in with him and his mom. I kept blocking. I tried telling him nicely, fighting, ignoring. He just kept messaging me off different Facebooks. It was draining. He left me alone for maybe a month, then messaged me off a girl's Facebook. My cover photo at the time was "No one loves you unless you're pretty or dying," and he had screenshot that and sent it to me saying, "I love you and I care. Choose me. You're gorgeous, blah blah blah." Any pictures I said is my cover photo. He would send to me, replying to them. He thought I was talking to him through my cover photos. That creeped me out a great deal. He also tried saying that I told him that my relationship with my boyfriend wasn't serious. I never ever said that. He started saying that I never said I didn't want to talk to him, even though I'd been blocking him constantly. Somehow, he thought I still wanted to talk with him. But I blocked that one and didn't hear from him for about a year. Then a few weeks ago, I had a message request on Facebook from some girl's profile. It said, "I wish you could have chosen to be with the guy who would have given you the world, and still would. Hey, gorgeous." He used to call me that in almost every message, so I knew it was him. I had a breakdown. I told my boyfriend and he messaged him, but Stalker 1 denied it all, saying he hadn't talked to me since my boyfriend told him off last, which is a total lie. He still writes posts about me, saying he wishes I felt the same, even asking his friends to look at my profile. I get a lot of friend requests from people I don't know. And yeah, that's my story so far. Number 3. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were road tripping across the U.S. At 3 a.m., we stopped at a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. By the middle of nowhere, I mean the middle of nowhere. The gas station was the only building in the area, and it was surrounded by empty fields. It was maybe 2 miles off the interstate. At 3 a.m., it was pitch black outside, and the lights of the gas station were the only thing that illuminated the area. Since the gas station was closed, we were the only people there. My husband flipped up the Jeep, and we spent a few minutes rummaging through our bags, because I couldn't find my purse. Turned out that I had left it in a relative's car in Chicago. Oops. After a while, an SUV pulled up right next to us. The driver was a white man in his late 20s or early 30s. At the point, I was sitting in the passenger seat, and my husband was about to get in the driver's seat. The man approached my husband and said, "I lost my iPhone here. Have you seen it?" Suddenly, a sense of dread filled the pit of my stomach as I noticed he already had a phone, a flip phone, on his hip. I studied his face. While he looked unassuming, there was something off about him, something sinister. "I must have left it over there in that field," he said. The field was pitch black. "Can you help me look for it?" he said. My husband already had his iPhone with the flashlight on. He's such a good Samaritan. He started to follow the man, but I whipped out my phone and texted him, "Leave." My husband immediately saw the text and looked at me. I must have looked terrified, because he ran, jumped into the car, and we booked it out of there. As we were leaving, I looked back and saw the man get into his car. We drove for about 20 miles on the interstate to a rest stop and slept there. After a short time, my husband woke me up and told me to lock the passenger door. The man had pulled up right next to us. There were some empty parking spaces at the rest stop, but he still parked next to us. The creepy part is that we were parked at the very end of the rest stop, and the spot next to us wasn't even a parking space. We had our seats down to help us sleep, so he probably didn't see us in our Jeep. We quietly watched him get out of his car, look over at our Jeep, and walk into the building, probably looking for us. As soon as he entered the building, We snapped our seats back up and hauled out of there. We drove for about 50 miles and found a hotel about 6 miles north of the interstate. And luckily, we never saw him again. Number 4. I've thought about sharing the story on Reddit. The time and place never seemed right until I found this subreddit. I rarely ever think of this. I think I mostly blocked it out. I'm female. When I was 25, I was in a transition period of my life. I was divorcing my husband and moving back to my home state to figure things out. My aunt had a small 1,500 square foot 1950s house in a quiet neighborhood. Doors that stick, squeaky wood floors type of place. She'd moved out, but couldn't commit to sell. But she was happy to let me live there for a bit. I lived in the house for about 5 months. This house was a single-story home, but it was on a hill, so if you went around the back of the house outside, you could walk through a door into a small basement of sorts that you could stand in. If you were in this small basement and continue to walk toward the front of the house, you could quickly be crouching, then crawling. It was a small concrete storage area, and it was under what was my bedroom. One thing I remember about this place is that it was creaky and not well insulated. The floors were creaky, and when you were down in the basement area, you could sort of see light coming through the cracks in the bedroom floorboards. I maybe went down there once, got creeped out, and left. It was around the back of the house, like I said, and I had no reason to even be back there. Being 25 and recently leaving my jerk husband, I will admit I had a few male suitors visit me in that house, in that creaky, uninsulated bedroom. So I get my dream job and moving out of the house. I'm also moving out of the state, and my aunt has one request to me: to turn my water off at the street before I leave. So right before I leave the house, I turn the water off at the street. I come back inside and turn on the tub faucet, no water. I have done my job. However, this is where fate steps in. I left the faucet turned on. I never thought to turn it back off. And I drove away to my new life. A few days later, my aunt calls. She's upset because the water company has called her to say there's an unusually high amount of water running through at her home. I promised her that I'd turn off the water and told her about checking the tub. So I'm out of the state. She's out of the state. So my mom gets recruited to go over and figure out what's going on. Well, come to find out that the neighbor from next door had been kicked out. He was living in the little room under my bedroom. He had strung an electric cord over the fence from his house. He had clothes and a toothbrush. I guess he was bathing in our yard. And when I turned off the water, he went right back out to the street and turned it back on. He'd been living right under my bedroom floorboards. I am tense just writing and remembering this. I never ever want to meet this guy. The thought of him living right under my feet, listening to me in my bedroom, that still gives me chills. Number 5. I'm just gonna say, I don't know if this belongs here. It was extremely scary at the time. I'm currently a 15-year-old female. For a bit of backstory, at this time in the story, I was 14 with a St. Bernard. Anybody who's seen the Beethoven movies knows just how big a dog this breed is. I had Bailey for about 2 years at this time, giving him ample time to become attached and protective of me. On this night, my mom had gone out with my brother on a trip to the country, leaving me alone for the weekend. My sister lives nearby though, so if I had any problems, I could just call her. It was the middle of winter. I was home alone, and I had to go outside to feed Bailey. Now, my garage has 2 doors, a large one at the front and a smaller one at the back, which locks from the inside. Because of the lock on the smaller door, I had to open the front door with the remote, go into my front yard, through the garage to get to the back door where I can access the backyard and Bailey's food bowl. I had just finished feeding Bailey when the light went out, which is motion censored. And I was used to it going out sometimes. I was putting the scoop back into the barrel when the light came on again. This didn't seem too weird. Maybe I triggered the light, right? Except that the sensor faces away from me, so I look up, and there's a man standing there, just staring at me and smiling. I was going to ask him something along the lines of, "Can I help you?" But he said something first, and this scares me quite a lot. "You're a very pretty girl. How about you come home with me? I have lots of things you'd like." Some people may think what I do here is irresponsible, but I was putting my dog in danger, and I kind of agree. But this guy was 5 feet from me, and wasn't holding any weapons that I knew of, so in one movement, I flipped the latch on the door and hurled it open. Bailey was still eating, but he must have known something was wrong, because the moment he looks up, Bailey's bolting through the door towards this guy, and having his 75-kilogram body tackle the guy to the ground. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want Bailey to severely injure this guy. I know I'm an idiot. So while he was on the ground, I shut the back garage door, grabbed Bailey by the collar, and ran inside to shut the front door by remote. I didn't look outside. I just ran into my room to grab my phone and dial 000. When the police arrived, the garage door was open. The guy was nowhere to be seen. There's a button on the inside of the garage to open the door, and I suspect he got out using that. He wasn't found on that night, and I don't know who he was, or if he was ever arrested. I just don't want to see him ever again. Also, if you guys want to see the dog Bailey, I'll have it up on the screen for about 20 seconds. Here you go. Number 6. Longtime lurker. Here's my attempt at a contribution from experience I had when I was 12 or so. Take it or leave it. One time, when I was a kid, my parents were getting ready to go on a trip for the weekend and leave me home alone. I was a good kid, and we live in a relatively safe community. I got a phone call on our home phone. See, these were the days before caller ID. And somebody asked if my mom was there, asking her by her name. Well, my name sounds very similar to my mom's, so I thought they were asking for me. "This is she," I answered. Well, we didn't get very far into the conversation before I realized the mistake. He thought, or I thought he was speaking to my mom. I should have just corrected him, but I was a bit socially awkward, and I just figured to end the call and never bring it up again. Then he asked if my husband, my dad, was home, and I told him no. Then he lowered his voice and told me, "Well, I already knew your mom won't be home this weekend, and now I know your dad won't be either. You really shouldn't tell strangers things like this." Then he hung up. I was petrified, and I was too scared to tell my parents because I didn't want to get in trouble for accidentally pretending to be my mom. So they left on their trip, and I spent the entire weekend on edge, constantly making sure my windows and doors were locked and keeping my dogs by my side every second, until I heard a crash in the basement. Unmistakable. There's a gate, so I know my dogs couldn't have been down there. I immediately called the police, as my parents told me to do if I ever heard noises in the house. I waited for them to show up, hiding in my closet, ready to wet myself from fear. The police eventually showed after about 10 minutes, and they investigated the basement and found no sign of anything. To this day, I have no idea what happened that weekend. Whether the crash was a coincidence, and the man was just a family friend trying to teach me a lesson about pretending to be my mom, or whether someone found their way into my house, but was scared off when they heard me call the police. Nothing ever came of it, but I still shudder to think what could have happened to me that weekend. I still don't like to be alone in the house, over 10 years later. Strange man on that phone? Let's not meet. Hey guys, Basement Horrors here. Hope you liked the video. If you did, tell me in the comments. Also in the comments, ask me any questions you have for me for that Q&A that's just getting closer and closer. Also, if you have any personal horror stories, original creepypasta, or original artwork you'd like featured on the channel, send it to basementhorrors@gmail.com. And tell me what kind of stories you'd like to see next. Anyway, that's it for this video. Till next time, have a horrific day.